Coming to you live from deep within an icy, radioactive wasteland, we are the survivors of the social justice zombie apocalypse, once more wading into battle against the zombie hordes with Rantzerker number 20. Right?
That's right.
That's right. Okay, I'm Alison Tiemann, your host, and with me today is the grapefruit-loving Karen Strawn.
I mean, okay, I like grapefruits, but I mean, I don't want to have long, warm showers with them into the wee hours of the morning, okay? I'm not a grapefruit lover. I just think they're tasty.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Let's make the distinction. She doesn't want to have a romantic relationship with the grapefruit. She just loves them. All right, let's begin. Let's get right into it. People don't want to know about our breakfast food preferences.
I just like to eat them and suck on them sometimes.
I gotcha.
Right. Okay.
All right, let's begin this thing.
All right, I guess I better start screen sharing then.
Yep. And I will select you so that, there you go.
Here we go. Here she is.
Excellent. No, I was just saying excellent.
I think I'm gonna be nitpicky. Okay,
are you?
Maybe not.
Today we're talking about,
for a minute it looked like she had lipstick on her teeth.
Feminism, and
they're very white teeth though.
Yeah, she's got a great dental plan.
Yeah, because that looks, unless she's got teeth that like respond to Crest white strips, mine never did. Yeah, she paid good money for those white teeth.
I know I talk a lot about what feminism is, but today we are going to focus on what feminism isn't. Feminism as a movement has been around since the late 1800s, so long that we often have to break it up into different eras or waves. When you're around that long and you redefine yourself a few times,
and this is the first thing that drives me crazy about this video. You know, like, redefine yourself. I mean, like, I can see, you know, change your focus a few times or whatever, but how do you redefine equality? You know, if that's what you're about, equality.
Yeah, I know. I was mentioning this on the Rantzerker with Mike. Ooh. It's like somewhere along the road, somewhere we forgot about like legal equality. That was just like, no, it's okay. Let's just forget about that, because nobody can say what legal rights men have that women don't, because they don't have any.
Right. Women lack the right to walk around topless in public in some places in the West. So.
Okay, well, fine.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any other legal rights that women lack that men have. And quite a few legal rights that women have that men lack. So at some point in time, it no longer became about legal rights. That goal was superseded and forgotten about.
Yeah.
Now we're on to something totally different.
Yeah, no, and we're on to something totally different that actually it's not just a complete unfocusing on the legal rights issue. It was a push, in part by feminists, in the 1980s, when Canada, you know, ratified our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which became our Constitution, essentially, right, to include special privileges in there for women and for other groups that had a, you know, sort of a history of oppression. And so essentially they're now considered, you know, more equal than others. And it is legal to discriminate against sort of these non-historically oppressed groups. And all of that, deciding who is the historically oppressed group and who is the historically non-oppressed group. That all happens through case law, and thus far, pretty much every decision has been in the direction of defining women as part of those extra protected groups, and men upholding the fact that men are they do not deserve this extra protection and can legally be discriminated against. So, and how do you even turn something like that around?
Burn it, burn it all to the ground.
You know, how do you even say, get the momentum in the case law changed, right? If from heading firm in one direction, right? At what point is some court somewhere going to make the very, very brave decision that women actually aren't oppressed anymore, or that men are equally oppressed, right, or equally disadvantaged, and therefore they deserve protection by virtue of being male as well, or that we need to remove this protection from women because, you know, it's time. How do you even do that now that we have this sort of edifice of things like the Legal Action Fund and you know, in Canada, and the all of these very well funded feminist initiatives and groups and NGOs, right, who all have like pots of fucking cash to continue to litigate anytime there's anything that upsets them, and build up this sort of huge mountain of case law, all saying that women are oppressed.
Like I said, this is a fucking wasteland. Like
they're essentially using their privileged position to claim that that women are oppressed.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what the privileged have done throughout history. Usually you can identify them because they're the ones shouting from the top of a fucking pedestal, yeah, I'm oppressed by all those dirty people looking at me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, but let's get through this shit.
Those people shouldn't speak until I speak to them first.
Yes.
Yeah.
But their very existence oppresses me. Because they smell and their thoughts. If they turn their eyes to me, they sully my royal purity. Okay, let's move.
They're creepy, Alison. Creepy.
You're going to have a few misconceptions claimed to you. I assume that's why some blogs refer to Madonna as a spider queen hell-bent on taking over the world, because that's not a comment about her body, right? And
maybe about her shirt.
She's not an actual spider queen, right? Right? So today we are going to do some debunking. We are going to bust some...
Like, I have no idea what that is even about.
No, neither do I. It's just skating off the surface of my mind at this point. Like, what... She admittedly, Madonna is very, she definitely looks like a teenage gang person. Like she has that sort of wiry, that sort of wiry toughness, which I guess sort of looks like a spider. I don't know. It just looks like a wiry human being to me, but.
Yeah, I you know, like I suppose I could have Googled, you know, to find out what that's all about. It seems to be like a big deal. It seems to be one of those things that this young lady assumes that everybody would know about.
I'm sure that she probably would put MRAs in there somewhere. Like the MRAs are saying that Madonna is the spider queen. It's the first time I've heard about it, but okay.
Yeah.
Men's rights activist, for those of you who are just tuning in to the zombie wasteland.
The zombie wasteland.
Serious myths about feminism. Myth number 1, feminism is about female supremacy. Feminism is all about the...
Wait. No, okay, let's let her speak.
Okay, I'm just gonna...
About female supremacy. Feminism is all about the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. It's about creating equal opportunities for groups that do not have equal opportunities.
Okay, wait. All right, here's the thing. How do you define that?
Yeah.
I mean, who gets to define equal opportunity? Who gets to define the equality? Who gets control over the equal symbol in this equation? Because right now, I suspect that you are moving the goalposts when it comes to equality. Because, like I said at the beginning, somewhere along the way, we just sort of forgot about legal equality. We just like, okay, well, nope, legal equality is achieved, but we'll just forget about that, and we'll move towards some other kind. I mean, I'm defeated, Karen.
We didn't even achieve legal equality. I mean, like the first wave suffragettes, they were all about legal equality, and they achieved legal equality. Yeah, no, they fucking didn't, because there were still obligations that men had legally, not just to the state, but to their wives, right? That women never got as part of their deal when they received their legal equality, right? And so they didn't achieve their thing. And then economic equality, well, that was the second wave's big fat spanking deal. And yeah, they got their equal pay legislation. Fuckload of good it did, right? Because women are still earning less, and oh my goodness, that's a problem. And so now we're on to this whole social equality thing, where if there's any difference in outcomes where women lag behind in anything that's remotely desirable, right? Anything that has any amount of respect or status in it, right? Then obviously there is some social inequality at work. And oh my goodness, the whole social inequality thing, that's so difficult to detect. We know it's there, but we don't really have to prove it because it's not really very measurable and quantifiable, don't you know? But there's sort of an atmosphere of discrimination, and there are these sort of invisible barriers and pressures that, guide women and close off some doors, and just make things a little more difficult for them for social reasons and blah, blah, blah. Right. So now we have to reorchestrate all of society, all the way down to how people have fucking sex. Okay. And we have to completely redo the whole fucking thing just to make sure that everybody has equal opportunities.
What's interesting about this whole thing is I want to go back to what I mentioned before about men when they're being told, oh, you're privileged. Look at the woman who's telling you that you're privileged and ask yourself, what was her worst job ever? Mm-hmm. I bet that the worst job that this girl has ever done was probably making bagels.
Or being a hostess at a restaurant.
Or being a hostess at a restaurant. Yeah. That's probably the worst job she's ever done.
It wasn't picking chickens.
95% of men can say that the worst job that they've ever done was the kind of job that in slave-owning societies would not be out of place with the quarry slaves doing. In other words, it was quarry slave work. Roofing in 105-degree weather, digging ditches.
Picking chickens.
Picking rocks out of farmers' fields.
Oh, that's fun, though.
Yeah, well, it's not for 8 hours.
It was especially fun back before bug spray and sunscreen.
Yeah. I mean, think about this. 95% of men, or a good portion of men who have been employed, have a worse job, can honestly say that the worst job that they ever had would be something in a slave-owning society the quarry slaves would have done.
My boyfriend used to hold a 60-pound jackhammer up over his head and use it.
Yeah. Just think about that. Now, when we talk about financial equality between men and women, remember that 95% of men have at one point in their life had a worse job that would be entirely, it wouldn't be out of place for quarry slaves to have done. Like the lowest slaves on the totem pole in a slave-owning society would have done those jobs. Now, why did men take those jobs? Because the $2 or $3 extra was enough of an incentive for them to endure the kind of hardship that other societies would have forced on the lowest slaves.
There you go.
What does that represent? That means that's a level of motivation that men have that women don't. And even when those men who, for whatever reason, either they have family helping or they are higher intelligence or they manage to qualify for a scholarship, they go into education and they finish their education and they get into a white-collar job, they bring that motivation into that white-collar job. The motivation that you have a brother and a sister. You have a Jack and Jill. Jack is roofing. He's dealing with hot tar in the middle of fucking July in Austin, Texas, pounding tiles into roofing tiles onto roofs. And his sister is in a hair salon organizing bottles of shampoo.
And answering the phone.
And Jack is making at that point in time maybe $5 more than his sister.
Yeah.
And then they go to school, and they both end up in a white collar job. But the motivation that Jack brought to getting up every fucking day, walking up that ladder with like 80 pounds of fucking tile on his back, pounding it for 8 hours, 9 hours, 14 hours a day shifts in hot sun, the motivation to keep doing that, Jack brings to his white collar job. And then at the end of the day, feminists have the gall to look at the wage gap and say, oh, that's discrimination against women.
Yep.
Actually, the wage gap should be fucking higher, or
Yep.
it's discrimination against men, because men bring that kind of passion, that kind of motivation to their jobs, the kind of motivation that has Jack slaving away at a job that would have been given to quarry slaves in the slave owning society, and Jill in air conditioning arranging fucking shampoo bottles. That difference in motivation is going to result in a difference in wage, even in white collar jobs. So the reality is, and I'm going to use that phrase, the reality is that until you see an equal number of women roofing, tiling roofs, wading into sewers and breaking apart rafts of shit glued tampons, until you see women doing equal numbers of those shitty jobs, you will not see them being equal numbers of CEOs. You will not see them being equal numbers of politicians. And you will not see them being equal in those white collar jobs that the feminists want to see women in. Why? Because they won't have the same level of motivation. They won't bring the same level of motivation. The same thing that gets Jack into fucking doing roofing for $5 more than Jill is the same thing that makes him earn $75,000 more than Jill at the end of the day when they finally get out of that situation where they're doing shit work. Okay?
Pretty much.
And it's not even a situation where, you need to advocate for equality in the lower level. No, it's literally laws of fucking physics and psychology. If women aren't that motivated enough to take the really, really, really bad jobs who only play slightly more, then they're not going to bring that motivation to the higher class jobs. And it's going to be reflected in their wage.
All right. Okay. Moving on.
It's not about putting men down, but rather raising women up to meet.
You raise women up. See, this is all about what would we call it? Positive liberty. Positive liberty. So negative liberty would be like removing all of the barriers and saying, well, yes, why shouldn't women be allowed to be admitted to college? And yes, why shouldn't women be allowed to work this type of job? And okay, so we all agree now there shouldn't be anything actually concrete standing in women's way. Right? It should be understood among everybody that a woman can be a lawyer, a woman can be a politician, a woman can run for office, a woman can do these things if she chooses, right? But now lifting women up, not allowing women to rise, but lifting women up. So this is where the positive liberty, it's no longer just nobody has the right to fuck with you, right? Now it's you get to fuck with everything and everybody else. Otherwise, you don't have freedom. Okay? Because, if the circumstances of your life are such that, it would be more difficult for you to be able to take that opportunity than it would be for, I don't know, a richer person or a person with a higher IQ or their parents read them more bedtime stories and encouraged them in school more or whatever, right? And so that person is just going to find it easier, right, to take advantage of that opportunity than you. Now you need to be provided with things that even the playing field between you and that other person?
Okay. This is like, somebody in chat said, well, what if it's because men and women are socialized differently? Yeah, I would say it's probably, well, Karen would say it's biological, and I would agree that part of it is biological, and I would also say that part of it is being trained the way girls are raised. I'm like, okay, let me give you an example, a little bit of a story time here. A couple days ago, on my to celebrate my husband's birthday, we went into the city. Sort of exciting. And he got a haircut.
You're such
a what?
You're such a hick. We went into the city. It was exciting.
Yeah. And he got a haircut. And I was sitting waiting for him to get his haircut. And I was in a hair salon. And I looked at the bottles right next to me in by the chair I was sitting in. And I noticed there was one particular bottle of, I think, shampoo with a little hairbrush on it. It was very pink. And what it said on there was, Mr. Woofles hates it when brushes make little girls cry. And so it was essentially a product for a brush that doesn't cause little girls to weep when their hair is being brushed. And I was like looking at this and I was thinking, this is a culture where 30% of infant boys, I mean, regardless of whether or not you think that circumcision of boys is as bad as circumcision or genital mutilation of girls, wherever you are on that, this is a culture where Canada, 30% of boys will be strapped down to a table and have a scalpel inserted into their body without anesthetic. Most of them without any anesthetic. And here I am looking at this bottle that's marketed based on the idea that it doesn't make little girlies cry when their hairs get brushed.
Yep.
And I'm like, wow, this is a society. You want to challenge the socialization that leads to boys saying, you know what, that extra $3 is fine to destroy my back for. It's fine to be in constant pain while I'm at work for that extra $3 an hour. You want to challenge the socialization? Well, then you got to tell your daughters when you're combing their hair with a brush that hurts, shut up, you little fuck. Suck it up.
Suck it up.
Suck it up. Not even that.
You know what?
You gotta be in a society where you stick a scalpel into a little girl and you don't care. You don't give a shit. You're just like, oh no, that's that. She didn't feel anything. That's the kind of society we'd have to be in to get equality. Maybe what we should really do is start looking into not treating boys that way. But you know what? I'll let Karen go because I can hear she wants to talk.
Well, I just, like, honestly, so many of these little girls whose parents get them this stuff, right? I just told my daughter when she started not wanting to take care of her hair enough, right? So not brushing it several times a day. She's got a mane. And if it isn't brushed several times a day or kept in a braid or something, right, then it's just like miserable. And I finally saw, like, you just tell the kid, like, if you want to have long hair, right, you're going to take care of it. And I'm not going to hear you bitching about, the hairbrush. So which would you rather? Because look at my hair. You can have that hair too.
Yeah. And ultimately that encapsulates the difference. It encapsulates why Jack goes and does a job where he's basically in pain for 14 hours a day, and Jill goes and does a job where she's organizing shampoo bottles.
Yeah.
Because all her life, everybody's made it a priority to make sure that Jill doesn't cry. Yeah. And everybody has made it a priority. At some point in Jack's life, he realized that crying gets him nowhere.
Yep.
And that he has to earn what he gets. And if you want a society in which the moment that women are half of the roofers, half of the garbage collectors, half of the sewer workers, is the moment that women will be half of the CEOs and half of the politicians.
You know what's a really awesome job in the spring around here in Edmonton? Is there are landscaping companies that, sort of right around the time that the snow melts, they offer a service to de-dogify your yard. Right? And that this
is dog poop, I guess.
Yeah, pick up an entire 6 months worth of dog shit that's been sitting under the snow for all winter, and then now has essentially had snow melting through it and around it until it's now like just sort of a slurry of shit on your lawn, right? And they hire, high school boys and stuff like that for extra staff, or they have people work overtime in the spring, and it's all men. It's all men and young men, right? And then they come in for $120. They do your yard for $120, and I'm like, I could pay you $500. Like, this is the kind of job that a lot of young men do. And I mean, frankly, my son, my oldest, he dishwashes. And when he comes home from work in the winter, it's like -30, -40, and his clothes are soaking wet. And no matter how nice warm a jacket he's wearing, when he takes the bus home and then he walks the 3 blocks from the bus stop home, his clothes freeze solid on him. It's just, and he's just like, meh, no biggie. Doesn't bother him. Doesn't bother him to have his hands in disgusting, half-eaten food all day that other people have had their mouths on. Doesn't bother him.
All right.
Let's continue.
Admittedly, understanding feminism requires understanding that humans, even humans from Western countries, are not born equal.
I know.
No, certainly. Like once again, we invite the audience to imagine this woman's worst job.
There you go.
Possibly pastry tester.
Oh, burn.
No. Is that a burn? I mean, like, I'm saying that, it's a nice job. Like, you could just be testing pastries all day.
Actually, there are people who work in factories where they make stuff like cookies and things like that actually have to taste each batch of product. That's their job.
Yeah. But that is not, I think that's, well, it probably isn't that great a job. I mean, but it probably is better than wading into a sewer and trying to break apart a raft of tampons glued together with liquid shit.
Yeah. Oh, and don't forget all the used condoms that are all mixed in there.
Yeah. Have you ever done that, Megan McKay? You're talking about other people being privileged besides yourself. So
I still remember that one photo that they had in the local newspaper of one of these sort of mountains of detritus that had to be removed from one of those huge intake grates to our sewage treatment facility here in Edmonton. And it was literally twice as tall as a man. This pile of stuff that they routinely have to pull off of the grate so that the water can continue flowing, and it's the nastiest, like anything that isn't human excrement or toilet paper that gets flushed down a toilet, right? Sometimes used needles, bags of weed. All kinds of stuff. Yeah, that all gets stuck on those grates. It's gorgeous, and I would really enjoy doing that.
Oh God. So. This is why
people are so shitty, though. Why would the city have to ask people not to flush those things? Do people not realize that somebody ends up having to deal with it?
Yeah, but the thing is that I don't have a problem. Like, nobody wants to do these shit jobs. Literally, nobody. Yeah. It'd be better if we created robots and do them. And I understand why women don't want to do them. And if you don't have to, you don't have to. Like, just let the people who don't have the same privileges you do them. But don't turn around and then say that men have privilege.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, fine. Don't fucking turn around and say that men have privilege.
Yeah.
Tranquilizer-sized pill to swallow for a lot of people, especially those who benefit directly or indirectly from this built-in inequality.
Oh, that's so projection.
Projection.
The people who benefit from the privilege. Oh,
Nice fingernail polish there.
yeah, I know. It's like she hasn't had to do a hard day of work in a while. And
Yeah.
look at this gorgeously applied. It's very, very well applied. It's very nicely done. And these are like sort of highlights.
Mm-hmm.
She's got money to go to this, and she's wearing and these beautiful teeth. She obviously had. It can't be all genetics. It's got to be some braces or something that she had. That's like $10,000 nowadays to get braces for your kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's not even talk about the dental. Just the manicure, the makeup, the highlights.
Yeah.
She's got some coin to burn on her physical appearance, and usually that was a sign of one thing in the past.
Yeah.
Aristocracy.
There you go.
She's turning around and saying, "Naughty, naughty little peasants." Okay.
I still remember being married, right? And particularly when I was at home with the kids I think it was till my daughter was about 3. And so it was about 4 years of being a stay-at-home mom. And my ex was not working very well, good paying job. He was a cook, right? So we had to scrape every fucking penny that we could out of every single thing that we might have thought of buying. And so I just went, that was pretty much the only time that I had long hair since I was, quite young, because I couldn't afford to get my hair cut every 8 weeks. I couldn't afford to go and spend $15 on a haircut every 8 weeks. So
Yeah.
But she's
It's interesting that
she's wagging her finger at me.
Yeah, well, she's wagging her finger at men because you probably wouldn't consider you privileged. But the thing is the other thing is she probably, judging from her surrounds and her ability to spend money on the accoutrements, she probably could afford a proper diet.
Yeah.
Too. Which, I mean, let's be frank to people. It is, to some degree, your weight is a bit your choice.
Yeah, not always 100%, but certainly to an extent, definitely.
Yeah. Ooh, I fat shamed.
It's okay, Alison. I'll jump on the grenade for you when it comes, flying over your computer screen.
Leads us to our next point. Myth the second. We're all equal now. We don't need feminism. Not quite.
Agreed. But I don't think you mean the way I think,
Yeah, I gotcha.
Whatever.
An estimate suggests that we won't reach pay equality until 2133.
Well, you'll never reach it.
Never reach it. We will never reach pay equality. You know why I know? Because the moment my boyfriend was making enough for me to quit my job, I quit my fucking job. The moment he was making enough for me to cut back my hours, prior to that, I cut back my hours. Because you know what? 65% of full-time working women would rather work less, not more. And the moment they have a husband or male partner who can compensate for them scaling back their participation in work, they do it. Because that's a privilege, right? And that means that unless men start refusing to subsidize women's lives, then you're never going to have pay equality. It's not going to happen, ever.
Well, and also the government refusing to take money from men to subsidize women's lives.
Yeah. You're just not going to have it.
Once again, if you've decided as a woman that you don't want to work, your partner is willing to do that.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. Just don't fucking complain.
And don't call yourself lacking in privilege.
Yeah.
Just acknowledge. Just form your mouth around the words. I am privileged as a woman. My worst job was probably organizing shampoo bottles.
Yeah, or serving drinks.
That was my worst job. I am privileged to have been in the class of people who get so much from society that I don't feel motivated to get that extra $3 an hour for the labor job in which I'm going to be in agony for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm
No.
privileged. Just form your word. Just form your mouth around the words.
Form your mouth around the words "I'm privileged," because you, young lady, fully expect that at some point you will be getting married or, moving in with a man, and he will subsidize your reproductive choices, and he will subsidize your work choices. And you're going to be able to, you will feel entitled to the option to work less, to take a year off to have a baby, and then when you go back to work, to only work part-time, because you have a man who's willing to subsidize that, right? And you expect that. You expect that is an option in your future. And if it turns out that option never materializes, you're going to feel pissed off, because that was something that you were expecting. You were expecting to have the option. Unfortunately, that option requires the cooperation of another person. So you might not get it.
Well, another thing is that it also, the exercising that option means in aggregate, women are going to be making less than men. And the other thing is that, being the stay-at-home spouse is not necessarily, it has its own, if they're doing it right, which I doubt this woman would be doing, I mean, it is very supportive. And sometimes when you're dealing with really high level, high performing men or women, generally there's a lot of emotional pressure that comes with it. And if you're doing it right as a staying home spouse, you're supporting them emotionally. You're making their lives easier. You're handling all of the little shit so they don't have to.
Yeah.
And that I can understand. It can be really, like, when one person is making, and that's, we're talking about really high level, like CEO stuff, or maybe not vice president, because there's so fucking many of them in most companies, but when you're making those kinds of decisions, sometimes you do just want to come home to someone who's gonna, rub your back and say, I believe in you, and put your needs first.
Well, and take care of all of your, don't forget you have that doctor's appointment, blah, 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 blah. Making those kinds of appointments for you, taking care of the bills, taking care of all of the logistics of running a house, all of those things. That's like having a personal assistant, not just a spouse.
Which is really what all the feminists, they had the problems with the Susie Q homemaker in the 1950s, but really that's what it was about. It was about the idea that when he came home, she was the one who was making the decisions and putting him first, because in his work life, he would have, if he's like in the position to be paying for a home, basically a home assistant, he's probably pretty high up in the work ladder, which means he's been making decisions all day and usually trying to take care of other people. Now, this comes as quite a surprise to feminists, but leaders generally do a lot of fucking taking care of other people.
Yeah.
It's like almost 95% of a leadership job is dealing with people and trying to make sure they have what they need to get their jobs done.
Yeah.
And that's
often
exhausting
herding cats, and keeping track of what everybody is doing from every department and making sure that the conflicts are resolved and all of that. It's not something that I would ever want to do. And
to be honest, I can understand why men in that position wanted to come home to someone who would put them first. And I can understand why women in that position would want to put their husbands first, because they cared about them and understood what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I don't actually really give a shit if it's a man out in the working world and he comes home to his wife and his wife is his sanctuary, or if it's the reverse. That doesn't fucking matter to me.
Yeah.
But to turn around and say and want all of the benefits of being the homemaker, being supported, but none of the expectation of service to the person who is supporting you and who probably very much needs your support in order to be as high functioning as he or she is. It's exactly the same thing as I was pointing out before. Turning around, fine, you don't want to do those jobs, fine. Don't say that you aren't privileged for not having to do them.
Oh man, I'm just remembering this one guy that I was dating after I divorced. And he was He was fairly well known, sort of been profiled in various large publications and stuff. He's a researcher. I don't want to get further into it than that because I don't want to identify him. But he had a very, very, very good income. And he spent a lot of hours, anywhere from 10 hours a day to 16 hours a day in the lab. And before he would leave in the morning, he would walk his kids to school, and then, he'd get on the bus and go to the lab, and then he'd come home and he'd deal with his kids and teaching them the fundamental particles and stuff like that, his little daughter. And anyhow, his stay-at-home wife somehow managed to convince him, and he's a little autistic. So maybe someone that's emotionally manipulative maybe he's vulnerable to this. I think he was. But she managed to somehow convince him that it was only fair if he did half of the housework and all of his own laundry, because it was unfair that she was expected to do all of it. And I looked at him when he was telling me this, and he said, yeah, no, I tried it, but I just couldn't keep up with it. I couldn't keep up with it. And I finally told her, I can't do it. I looked at him and I said, why would you even entertain that as a possibility? The very first things out of your mouth should have been, and I think it's only fair that you bring in half the income, bitch. And until then, you're going to take care of the shit around here. Right? That's what I would have told her. Like, what gall? You've had a free ride, 10 years of it before you even had kids. 10 years they were married before they had their first kid, and she's been a stay-at-home wife the entire fucking time. And the unmitigated gall of suggesting that he should be stepping up and doing half the housework and his own laundry. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh.
And it's like I said, you know what? If you want to be the stay-at-home spouse, fine. And your partner's okay with it, fine. But recognize that is its own, in and of itself, its own job.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm, I guess I'm sort of in that position. But my husband treats it very seriously.
Yeah.
I'm lucky as hell because it's more than just like cooking and cleaning. I mean, he does work too, but cooking and cleaning and fixing the car and doing light carpentry and building shit and all kinds of stuff that I don't even think a man who has a stay-at-home wife gets.
Yeah, not typically.
No, I mean, you usually do stay-at-home wives ever actually realize that maybe if they're staying at home, they should be the ones doing the light carpentry and the plumbing and the electrical work?
I did.
Yeah.
And the power washing the siding and the
and doing the landscaping. Maybe that's literally, if you're a homemaker, you should be taking care of all the aspects of the home.
Yeah.
Seems fair.
And the whole honey-do list that the man gets handed on his weekends. I mean, honestly, some men really do like being sort of the weekend warrior project types. They're 2 days off. They're, working on staining a fence or something like that. A lot of men really get a lot of enjoyment out of stuff like that. Right? But generally, men don't get any kind of enjoyment out of their weekend by a woman handing them a list of shit to do. And not just a list of shit to do, but a list of shit to do to her specifications. She decided what color the fence was going to be stained. He didn't have any say in it. She decided what kind of tree they were going to plant in the front yard. She decided that she wants a frog pond, right? And so it's essentially, so much of it is these days is a woman handing a man essentially a picture from a magazine and saying, make it look like this, and then expecting that she'll be able to just come back in, a month and it'll be done exactly to her specifications, and she didn't have to lift a fucking finger.
Well, I think men should, guys who want to be the breadwinner should hold out for a better deal. You should hold out for a woman who can do light carpentry and plumbing.
And install a light fixture and yeah.
And if you have enough money that you don't really need the woman to do it, you should hold out for someone who can manage contractors.
Yeah.
And get the best job done, who knows how to actually make sure that a contractor does the work right.
Yeah.
Like hold out for an actual equal partner. I mean, you can get an equal partner if she stays home, but make sure she's doing equal work.
There you
like
go.
make sure that she and none of this like hysterical tantrum throwing when you're off work either, because you're not getting what you want. She should be taking care of you emotionally as well. Like, this is reciprocal.
Yeah.
And that's what we're advocating for, is a reciprocal relationship here. And I don't, like I said, I don't care if it's a woman who's the high powered executive or the man.
Yep.
But anyway.
All right.
Although I would say that I think that women who are high powered executives, if they get a guy who's good with the homemade, they're probably going to luck out a hell of a lot more than a male executive, because he will be thankful and he will be hardworking and he probably will do as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, well, it depends. It depends. I think men, for the first little bit after they start staying home, they have a difficult time getting into the to the sort of the more traditionally woman's stuff role,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as of the homemaker. But they will go out and, you know, build that deck. You know, they'll take the first 3 months or something where they're acclimatizing themselves to being at home all day, doing, you know, more manly projects or more masculine oriented projects, or, you know, the projects that, you know, require, you know, tools rather than, you know, brooms and.
No, okay. From my own experience, I would say that men really know how to cook.
No, from my experience, I would say some men really don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. But if a man actually gets it in his head to cook,
oh yeah,
they fucking.
My ex went to culinary school.
Yeah, when they get it into their head to cook, they put their heart and soul into it. Whereas women, I've had maybe, you know, there might be some women who put their heart and soul into it, but it seems like it's more of a chore. Like they just want to get it done.
Yeah, well, I didn't go to culinary school, but I did cook at a high-end restaurant, and cooking at home is not something that I enjoy. It's just something that I force myself to do because somebody's got to do it. So
yeah.
But I spend a lot of my day doing things that I really do enjoy, and so it's worth essentially having, because if, you know, we could get takeout every night if I was working, but I don't want to work. It leaves me. It's much easier to save the money that I can by cooking from scratch at home and doing things like that. Then it's worth more to me just to have the extra time to do the things that I really do enjoy.
Oh, this is a really long tangent.
Okay. All right. Let's go.
3. And that estimate doesn't take into account how much worse the pay gap is for women of color, or the fact that by 20-
Actually, it isn't worse. Poor and women of color are not. They have a lower pay gap than white women such as her.
Well, she's talking about, you know, Latina women and their 58 cents on a white man's dollar.
Oh.
Or on all men's dollars averaged out, right?
Yeah, but the Latino, Latin culture is very big on the homemaker, isn't it?
It is actually, and last I checked, they, you know, Hispanics had fairly high marriage rate and fairly decent children born within wedlock rate, and fathers living in the home, and all of those sort of more traditional things. So yeah, there you would expect that there would be a bit more of a wage gap there. So, or a
Indeed.
bit more, but as well, you know, like Latina men aren't making tons of money. Latino men are not making tons of money on average, right? Men of color are not making tons of money on average. So,
have some alien overlords who believe pay equality is important. So, you know, could be a win situation there. The bogus war on Planned Parenthood.
Wait, alien overlords? Where did that come in?
She's just saying 2013 or whatever, 2113 or 2033. maybe the alien or overlords who care about wage equality will.
You know what? I think if by the time a species has gone into space, it's overcome its gynocentrism. So they're probably more likely to spank your ass and tell you to go work in a sewer.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
But
wait, actually, wouldn't that make us the alien overlords?
I think it would.
Oh my goodness. All right.
I haven't peeled off my skin lately. Maybe there is a reptile thing under there.
Reveals there is a fundamental gap in the understanding of what women need from their healthcare providers.
What?
Okay, I gotta go back here.
So there is a fundamental.
I hate these short videos.
Pay equality is important, so could be a win situation there. The bogus war on Planned Parenthood in the USA reveals there is a fundamental gap in the understanding of what women need from their healthcare providers. Just this week, an agency.
Okay, lady, you realize that the majority of people who are against Planned Parenting are you're just, it would basically be you with a like Christian symbolism.
Yeah.
Would you just be a Christian girl who's against Planned Parenthood or woman? That's your majority opposition is another group of women.
Yeah.
Who want to say what you want, and the funny thing is that it has actually been women throughout history who had the most to say about what other women did with their bodies.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not, okay, well, all right, maybe it's a feminist issue against conservative women, but then why are you blaming patriarchy because of disagreement with another group of women?
Yeah, and frankly, there are plenty of reasons to be not gung-ho about abortion and things like that. There are plenty of reasons that aren't even rooted in religion, that are rooted in just within an ethical framework of all kinds of questions about when personhood starts and what kind of limits should be placed on it, and all of these kinds of questions. They don't have to happen in a God context. And as far as that goes, I would say that because more men than women tend to be pro-life in the US, and then on top of that, more pro-choice men say that there should be no restrictions on abortion than pro-choice women. It is a bogus war on Planned Parenthood, because I don't think it is a war. It's a debate, and some people don't like Planned Parenthood, and they're entitled to freaking say it. All right, I'm gonna move on.
Job posting that said their receptionist position would be better suited for a female candidate. Admittedly, some of it.
Okay, let me. What?
Gap in the understanding of what women need from their healthcare providers. Just this week, an agency in Toronto posted a job posting that said their receptionist position would be better suited for a female candidate.
Okay, well, if this was a receptionist position in like a Planned Parenthood, I think probably they're right. But
we need more context, number one. And number two, wasn't that discrimination against men? I thought that when men are not allowed to have a job that, well, maybe she's going for the whole feminist advocate for men too angle. Let's keep going.
Admittedly, some of us do keep those while you were out message notepads rolled up in our coot at all times.
Okay, so she's going for the girls are more capable of more than answering phones.
No, I think she's being sarcastic there. I mean, it's a little hard to tell because she's not very punchy with her humor, but
she is being sarcastic. She's being sarcastic, of course, because of course all women are so intensely suited to, answering phones that they have these little while you were out notepads shoved up their vaginas, just available to whip out at any time.
Wouldn't they be sort of soggy?
You would think. Maybe they're hermetically sealed.
Okay, all right. But the idea here is that she's not talking about discrimination against men, which is what this is. When you advertise a job as being one group of people only, you're sort of discriminating against the groups of people you're not allowing to have that job, apply for that job. Yeah. So how did this become a bias against women?
Because it's insulting to be thought of as a receptionist, I guess.
Well, it's just a job.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
Come on. It's so unprofessional to pull that out at work. Women are judged based on their gender all the time, and there are countless examples that I could pull from. And they're all stored right here next to that notepad. Just kidding. I don't keep a list, and it's not. That was it. It's just myth the third.
I actually think that little bit there, that was kind of charming.
Yeah, that was charming.
I mean,
you're slightly charming. You will let you live now. Human.
Yeah, I mean, like, because she is kind of like, even though I can't stand the things that she's saying, she is delivering them in kind of a friendly, cute, charming kind of way. And, she's not being a cunt, and, she's...
Yeah, but you might find that charming. I think I prefer people being a cunt.
Yeah, it kind of makes it worse, because then people are more likely to believe her.
Well, not just that. I like women who are curt and acerbic.
Yeah, well, I do too.
It's like I don't like that sort of uncertain sense of humor. It's like, come on. That's I don't know. I find that I don't know where I'm going with this. I just she seems like she would be the kind of person who would take a lot of things personally.
Yeah, it denotes a lack of confidence.
Yeah, I like the confidence. I like the confident woman.
There you go.
I'm a woman and I haven't experienced sexism, so sexism doesn't exist.
Who says that?
Well, I'm a woman and I haven't. Well, you know what? I may have experienced sexism. I'm pretty sure I have. I don't really dwell on it, so I can't really give you my my Rolodex of sexist experiences that I've had. I'd have to actually sit down and think about it, because I'm not a feminist, so I don't bring them, I don't keep them close to the surface.
Well, I mean, like, my entire shtick is examining sexism, and you can't have sexism against women without there being sexism against men. If it's a different sauce, whether you're a goose or a gander, then it's a different sauce for both of them. And of course, men and women are treated differently, so of course they're both experiencing sexism, right? The difference is that the way you have to look at it is you have to look at the overall context, and you have to look at how the different assumptions about men and women play out in different contexts. Like, so when I was commenting on this video, I was like, okay, yes. So you have for women, you have this assumption, particularly for women who present like you do, sort of like that uncertain Bridget Jonesy type of charm, right? You have an assumption that they are going to be less capable and competent, right? And that makes it really difficult for them to get into those higher levels of jobs that are the sort of the pipeline to the C-suite. Okay. However, okay, when you commit a crime, it's that same kind of uncertain Bridget Jonesy kind of charm thing you've got going there, right? That assumption of less capability and less competence is going to mean less jail time for you. That's how that plays out. It has pros and it has cons, right? That assumption of competence that makes those higher levels of jobs maybe more accessible to men than to women. Well, that's going to play out in the opposite. It's going to be like a horrible, horrible thing when he's, got twice the likelihood of being convicted and, twice the likelihood of being incarcerated, and will serve a 60% longer sentence than a woman for the exact same crime, right? It's got positives and negatives. It's not like racism where, racism is pretty much all negative. People who experience racism experience pretty much all negative.
Yeah. Whether and not to say that you cannot be racist against people who are not of the traditionally oppressed classes.
Yeah.
But it's racism, ethnocentrism, religious, that tends to all be pretty fucking negative. It's all, gas chambers and whips and sometimes really subtle psychological manipulation if you're going to end up with a situation where two groups are very, very intimately entangled, which is generally what happens with slavery.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a dynamic. And to try to point to one half of the dynamic and say that's worse, or I don't know what.
It's difficult. I mean, you can say that this particular situation is worse. The other day I was commenting that okay, so yes, we agree, right? with Vanessa D. Fisher, right? Yes, the two of us agree that this assumption of moral patiency that we have about women, and this assumption being internalized or existing within women themselves, right? That holds women back. But at the same time, I told her, you know, if your car is broken down on the side of the road and you're a woman and you know how to deal with it, right? You can have 10 people stop to help you, and all you have to do is say, no thanks, I've got it covered, right? Because your problem is still going to be solved. But if you're a man and you know nothing about cars and your hood is open and nobody stops because they assume that you're a moral agent in that situation, then you're fucked.
Okay, let's drive forward. Let's be moral agents. Let's do this with confidence.
You know, having something important like that that's offered to you, which is help, sympathy, support, all of these things, having it offered and offered and offered and offered may get annoying and irritating for some women. It may essentially hold women back from their full potential because it creates an ability to become lazy, right? And to not do stuff for yourself, right? But there's still the option. There's the option between, yes, please, I want your sympathy, and no thanks, go fuck yourself, right? Men aren't even given that option. Nobody's offering them sympathy to accept or decline as they choose, or support, or help. They don't get the option.
Well, like I said, she's speaking from a position of privilege, like has been done throughout history.
Yeah.
And it's the privilege that allows her to say that she's a victim.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That you haven't experienced inequality just yet. Or maybe you have and you haven't noticed, or it hasn't really been an issue for you. Unfortunately, drawing on anecdotal experiences to make a broader conclusion isn't really sound rhetoric.
But that's all feminists do. You know, the plural of anecdote is data. And feminists are really, 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 really good at cherry picking anecdotes and turning them into something that looks like data.
You know, actually the plural of anecdote is not data. It's you'd have to, like, you can't take anecdotes are useful if there is no other evidence in a situation, but they are not really a good guide to the overall landscape. So no, it's yeah, you're right. Anecdote is not a good substitute for solid data, which is statistical analysis. And if you want to look at statistical analysis, you are not doing, you are actually privileged statistically, my friend.
Well, what I think is hilarious is you know, like when you have these feminist studies like that one of the 27 universities in the United States, that the numbers are completely wonky. That the one number that can be compared against a known number is 9, off by a factor of 9. The response rate was 19%, and they're, you know, the authors of the study say that it cannot be relied on to be representative of the general population of college students, right? But all of the press and all of the feminist activists and lobbyists are treating it as if it is representative of, because you know, obviously 1 in 5 women, you know, across the board in college will be sexually assaulted. And yeah, and even though the numbers don't match up with real world numbers.
Well, it goes the way it goes with the grain of society, Karen. It goes with the grain, which is that women are victims.
Yeah. Well, you know, like, and even if you take that sort of off by a factor of 9 part, so let's multiply that 5, 1 over 5. We'll multiply that 5 by 9, right? And then we get 1 in 45, which is awfully close to the 1 in 53 that the Department of Justice found. So, yeah. There you go.
Yes.
All right.
It's like me saying, every woman must have had burnt toast with cookie butter for breakfast this morning. Wasn't it awful? Why don't I respect myself? Don't judge, I need to do groceries. The point is, your life experiences are always valid and valuable, but they're not necessarily applicable in every single broader context.
Except for that standpoint theory was not a brainchild of MRAs.
Where the fuck is she going with this? Like, yeah, you're right. Your personal experience is not applicable in a broader context. So let us shut up about internalized misogyny and all of this other shit that you trot out whenever a woman says, hey, actually, you know, my brother had to roof for living when he turned 18, and I just arranged shampoo bottles. I don't feel particularly oppressed. Why don't we just turn all of that off and just go to statistics?
Yeah.
Statistical realities of men and women.
Yeah, and not these kind of weird statistics that, you know, are...
Well, if you want to do the weird statistics, then compare the weird statistics with women to the somewhat weird statistics with men. For example, the studies that are coming out now, which are small scale, yes, but they're still large enough to actually make a reasonable projection. You look at those studies, and you find that something like 42 to 53% of college-age men and high school-age men report having been sexually assaulted. By 95% by women.
Women, yeah.
Yeah, that's like 1 in 2. And I don't know if what they get when they do the last year stuff, but generally when you look at the last year numbers, it's pretty comparable between men and women. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go crazy with the numbers, go crazy with both. Don't just go crazy with one.
Yeah.
You know, compare like to like. Don't compare the craziest, most outlandish numbers for women to like the most conservative estimates for men.
Yeah.
That's dishonest.
Oh, so fucking dishonest. Oh my God.
Especially when you're using your life experiences to silence someone else's life experience.
What you're not?
I mean, okay, well, no, okay, she's not silencing me. Her life experience and my life experience, I can tell, are very, very different. She's not silencing me, but me saying, you know, lady, I think you're kind of bullshitty. That's not me silencing her.
Well, no, but what the thing is that all right, here's the thing. She's saying that her experience of sexism, whatever it was, which hasn't been clarified, is more of an indication of the overall experience of the female oversoul, the female hive mind, than, for example, our experience.
We are.
Maybe
your cultural and technological distinctiveness to our own.
Yeah, like, but whose subjectivity reigns supreme here, lady?
I know. Well, that's his standpoint theory, and it's strong objectivity. First, we must start with women's experience when we're doing research. In order to be objective, we must begin at the point of women's subjective experience.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is she is saying that her subjective experience is more accurate to the female oversoul than ours.
Yeah, I know. Somehow it's because our subjective experience is like us just saying, oh, well, it never happened to me. Right. Well, no, I don't think that anyone, at least none of us, are really saying, well, this happened to me. We use anecdotes to illustrate what we mean a lot of the time, give examples of a thing happening, but we use statistics, we use all kinds of research, we use all kinds of data that has been dug up by other people who have lots of letters after their names. So yeah, no, I'm not just relying on my own experience, and I have experienced sexism, but it's just not that big a deal to me, the type of sexism that I have experienced and the effect that it has had on my life.
Yeah, but ultimately she should ask herself, whose subjective experience, and why is it that the women's subjective experience, the women whose subjective experience is prioritized in her ideology or worldview, whatever the fuck you want to call it, is always the ones who are victimized.
Yeah, I know.
Damsels, always the ones who are primarily defined by how they've been acted upon by society and men. Okay, do you ever ask yourself, why is it that you're privileged? Your conception of femininity is privileged over ours, when we're focusing not on how we're acted upon, but how we can act and how we can serve, because the hero means servant, how we can be active, how we can improve the world around us and help men. Why is it that our subjectivity is automatic? And the other thing is, if our focus on being agents and actors in our own lives, and not just helping women, but helping men, oh my fucking God. Like, could you imagine women helping men, women being in a position of strength to help men? My God, that's just crazy talk.
I know.
And it's internalized misogyny too. And not in that kind of, I don't know, Mary Sue will radiate our holy femininity at men and purify their dastardly souls sort of shit. I mean, real world concrete help.
Yeah.
And that we have that internalized misogyny of wanting to help men. Wouldn't that make our subjective, according to standpoint theory, we are the most oppressed women because we have all the internalized misogynies? Wouldn't that make our standpoint more supreme?
Oh.
Let's listen to some more.
That's just not cool. Myth the third, feminism is just for white women. This is unfortunately a myth that many women accidentally believe in, not really understanding it or saying it out loud or even really processing it. Feminism is meant to be intersectional, to fight for equality for everyone of all gender identities and racial backgrounds. If you're able to understand that inequality exists, it's not that much of a leap to understand that even inequality is not created equally. I can experience oppression because I'm a woman and also—
Oh my God. Okay, I'm just taking a break.
No, the thing is that I do have something to say.
Oh, okay.
Feminism fights. No, you don't. You don't fight for. You appropriate.
Yeah.
You appropriate oppressions of other groups and append it to women. White women have always apparently, like, think about the power that white women have held throughout society. They help justify all kinds of atrocities.
Well, they helped do some really amazing things. I mean, they were instrumental in the abolitionist movement, and
yeah, but they also helped justify atrocities.
yes, they did.
And so, like, there's an ability there. There is a power there. So when you say that feminism fights, it's not. What it does is it takes the moral righteousness of other causes and appends it to itself.
Yeah.
It doesn't really fight for them. And if those groups of people actually step out of line,
oh boy,
they get the stick.
Oh man, you remember that one freaking feminist video about how talking about how, like, or was it a video or was it a article? Sargon did a bit on it in a This Week in Stupid, I think. It was about how some feminists going on and on about how gay men hate women, how gay men are misogynistic. Actually, and that they're the worst type of misogynist.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not like they're going to be raping women.
Well, maybe that's why. I mean, they hate women so much that they wouldn't even rape them.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
You
know what?
Not a new thing. This is Gadsad did a little video of a researcher, and it's a Jewish female researcher from Israel, who wanted to find out how much rape was going on by Jewish soldiers against Palestinian women, and of course, she's one of sort of these elites who is very anti-Israel and pro-Palestine and all of this, right? Because there's a weird thing going on with the sort of the elite levels of society with all kinds of guilt and self-hate and stuff that is happening in whites in the West and all kinds of other things, right? So she discovered, to her chagrin, that there was not one case of a Jewish soldier raping a Palestinian woman. And she couldn't find a single one. So she concluded that the reason for this was that Jewish men hate Palestinians so much, so deeply, that they consider Palestinian women not even worth raping.
Okay, well, you know what? At that point in time, if there's a group of men who hates women so much that they won't even sully their knuckles to punch them or rape them, he's like, well, whatever, let them. It's not
Yeah.
like it's going to impact my life.
Well, honestly, but of course, if she had found rapes by Jewish soldiers,
Fucked if you do, fucked if you don't.
soldiers, right, against Palestinians, then it would also be about how much the Jews hate the Palestinians, right? So, there's no way to win.
Well, there never is.
If you're raping them, you hate them, and if you're not raping them, you also hate them.
Yeah, well, that's like I said, it's the zombie. This is the wasteland. It's the wasteland. It's the desert of the real.
It's an intellectual wasteland, let me tell you. Okay, moving on.
Also privileged because I'm white at the same time. The same way a trans woman of color can experience oppression because of her gender identity, and oppression because of her racial background, and oppression because she's a woman, all at once. Whew. That's more oppression than me, for sure, but I don't need to treat this like the oppression Olympics. I don't need
What the fuck?
I know.
I'm sorry for everyone who I blasted. My fuck, you don't need to treat it like the oppression. You just did.
Yeah.
You've created a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Incidentally, you're still on top because despite all of your intricate dance of oppression manners, you still have the same power to influence society as white women have always had.
Well, in white society.
In white society, you have always had that power to influence male politicians to want to do shit to help you because you're a white woman. You've always had the power to influence mobs of people to hang other men, not just black men, but men in minority statuses because you felt they made you feel uncomfortable. He's poor, he's Irish, he's Italian, he's black, hang him. He looked at me funny. You've always had that power, that power to influence white men. And you have created this hierarchy, but it's like a funnel. Funneling down to you, all of that righteousness, all of that moral epiborum, all of that moral power, all funneling to you.
Sweet victimhood. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Should we take a break to masturbate or no?
To bathe in the sweet, sweet victimhood?
Yeah, roll around in it and rub ourselves all over.
I think we should finish this.
All right.
Or more important, or like anything other than it is. And I don't need to take it personally when someone says, hey, just so you know, you have more privilege than I do. This is a discussion, an uplifting of opinion.
I wonder if she would get upset if a man said that to her. Not just a man, a white, straight man. I think she probably would.
Opinions and voices that are normally silenced. It's important to make room for everyone and listen to what other people are saying.
Except men.
That respect is eventually what will make feminism successful. Maybe.
God, I hope not.
Well, no. I mean, maybe if you did listen to men.
Yeah, but God, I hope feminism will not be successful because I think feminism will listen to men, but it'll only listen to certain men who have certain opinions that agree with feminism. Of course.
Well, I need to point something out.
Sorry?
I need to point something out. Every civilization throughout history that relied on the labor of a group of people had all kinds of mechanisms for explaining why we didn't have to listen to them.
Yep.
We don't have to listen to those people complain because they were vanquished in battle. Their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers were vanquished in battle, therefore they bear the ignominy of blah, 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 blah. And then in this case, we got feminism to explain why we don't need to listen to men. Even though, and consider them privileged, even though, once again, think about it. What's the worst job that this woman has ever done? And if you're a man looking at this woman, what's the worst job you've done?
Exactly. And just remember, back in high school when you and your sister, were both paid the same allowance, but she always had money and you never had any, and you wondered why, and you realized it was because she had a boyfriend and you had a girlfriend. Isn't that interesting?
We are successful that someday we'll be able to open our own Disneyland-style theme park with rides like Safe Space Mountain and the Hall of Trans Inclusionary Presidents. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Myth the Fourth, white male.
Oh my God, that's like the worst. I think part of my fucking lower intestine died from that.
Oh God, I hope this safe space thing dies. I really do. It needs to die an agonizing death from multiple viral infections all at once. It needs to like be bombarded with Ebola, and we need to all just stand around and watch the blood come out of every orifice and pore in its disgusting lumbering body, right? That safe space thing, the big safe space monster, right? Watch it fucking bleed to death. Just watch it fucking, and just watch it just cry out its death cries, its death rattle, because nothing good can come of this. Nothing good can come of the safe space movement. It's only bad. It's all it does is make people more insular, more self-protective, more sensitive, right? Keeps them in a state of learned helplessness where they're picking at scabs all day, constantly, right?
And engaging in relational aggression.
And they never learn to cope with real life. That's what we want to have all over the place. Turn the whole world into it. Fuck.
Successful social movements attract allies who may not directly benefit from the goals of the movement, but recognize their importance and want to elevate them in a helpful way. That doesn't mean we need to worship at the altar of male feminists. We're taking time out of their busy dude schedules to throw us a...
Oh, God.
I mean, your busy dude schedule, working the jobs that you won't.
No, I don't think male feminists are doing that very much.
Well, maybe not. I'm actually probably sure that male feminists have had significantly worse jobs than this woman.
Of course they have, but they're not doing the I don't think that they're generally doing the absolute worst of the worst.
Well, yeah, that's because it's easier to think of yourself as being privileged if you're not actually doing the absolute worst job, which you would have to do if your intersectionality was, as a man, if your intersectionality was less, I know those intersectionality cards had fallen less favorably for you than it does for most male feminists, you would have found yourself in some of those worst jobs. And, what's really frustrating about all of this is I've seen guys, I live in a very rural area, and I can go to like social services places and places like licensing and other stuff where you're trying to get services that you need to survive. And in my case, or what I've seen is like guys trying to get a license after having something on their record or whatever. And you can see a lot of these guys in blue collar work, in working collar classes, they don't have the necessary skills to navigate these bureaucracies that are crushing them. And you see this so constantly. And you see the suicide, and you see the desperation, and you see the confusion, and you see the debt, and you see the guys just turning off, like just being crushed by this system. And then I'm watching this woman smiling as she describes how men are privileged. It's like, why don't you have some of my experiences? Why don't you go see these guys being crushed by the system? Why don't you look at my husband's high school photo? 30 kids graduated from his high school class. Only 6 of them were boys, young men. Why don't you look at some of this stuff and just soak in the frustration and the fear? Because, regardless of how men hide it, you can still sense it.
Mm-hmm.
The frustration, the fear, and the pain of these guys.
And
soak up a little bit of the lower class guys who haven't got the good cards that the male feminists get. Yeah,
because you can be guaranteed most male feminists are college educated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you even look at some of the difference that you can find at times. There was this one woman when my boyfriend was he was on medical leave indefinitely. Because of his disorder, it had not been diagnosed yet, and he really couldn't work. And we went into, update and with, the doctor's note saying he needs to extend the medical leave this many weeks, right? And all of this. The difference between who was helpful at the unemployment office, and who was a giant fucking cunt, right? And the one woman who was like so incredibly helpful, she came into my restaurant, months and months, a year and a half later, and I recognized her right away, and she recognized me right away, and she asked, oh, how are things going with you guys, and everything was going so much better. She's like, oh, that's so wonderful. Good for you guys. I'm so happy, blah, blah, blah. Right? Every once in a while you come across one of these gems, a fucking jewel among bureaucrats, among civil service workers, right? But most of them, they couldn't be asked to, they could not be arsed to fucking help somebody through the process, right? If you don't know how to do it, if you don't know how to interpret the forms, if you don't know what department to call, whatever, they're not going to tell you. They're not even going to tell you, oh yeah, okay, so we've got all these multiple government departments. You need to change your address with each and every one of them. There's no central database. No, they'll take your change of address, and they won't let you know that you have to change it at the Department of Motor Vehicles and at the Alberta Registry Services for your car, and at the not just with the Federal Revenue Agency, but with your provincial government and all of these other places that you now have to update your address. They won't even tell you. You have to go through that process too. With all of them, they'll just leave you to not do it, to not know.
When I did something really interesting that women don't usually do. My family is very much white collar. Like my father is a geophysicist, and my mother, when she was alive, she was in public relations, and she's a fairly high powered executive position. And I ended up, I guess, falling for a guy who was working class. And I can tell you one thing. That is one of the things that will definitely stop you from being a feminist. When you see how working class men suffer and how hard it is for them to even understand the systems that they're thrown into. And when I think about where my husband was at, because he had gone through multiple jobs where he'd been injured multiple times, because they were all labor jobs, really brutal environments. In fact,
if they're on farms too, there are no workplace safety standards to speak.
Well, in this case, he was working in a factory, and there was no workplace standards. They were apparently using chemicals that were neurotoxins. He was doing 14-hour shifts, working with tons and tons of machinery on tracks that occasionally gave out. And he's the first time he got injured, aside from the chemicals he was working with, was when two of those mainframes that were several tons pinned his drawing hand, because he was an artist, between them. And he tried to work for as long as he could, because he had student loans to pay off. And eventually he had to stop because he was in so much pain. And he went to the doctor, and he had to have surgery on his hand. And then a couple weeks after he had his surgery on his hand, without even seeing him, the doctor canceled his EI, his unemployment insurance, or his medical leave. Probably because they were, and a couple weeks after surgery on his hand, he was expected to work again. So he did his best, but then he washed out of that because he couldn't work. And just watching him go through all of the red tape and the bureaucracy, and realizing that, from him, in many ways, becoming part of my life was something that allowed him to be able to fight out of that hole. And because I helped him.
Yeah.
But there are so many, and this is part of what drives me in talking about these issues and trying to scratch out whatever we can of awareness. And everything starts with awareness. If you don't have awareness, you can't do anything. everything starts with awareness. That one of the things that inspires me to do that is just knowing that there are so many men out there like him. And I can't look at my life, and I can't look at the lives of the women in my class and honestly say, we are privileged. In fact, I can't even look at the lives of the women in my husband's, the working class women, and say that the working class men are privileged over them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones working class women, they're still graduating high school. They still have a chance to go into college with scholarships. These are things that working class men didn't have access to. They were told to drop high school and go into manual labor, where their sisters were encouraged to take university courses or to finish high school and go into university and become teachers or nurses or something. And it's like, I can't look at the situation where she talks about anecdotes as a woman like her, because her and me are probably from the same class, similar class, at least initially. I doubt that she's going to marry a working class man and actually have her eyes opened to the reality.
Yeah.
I doubt it. And if she really wants to talk about anecdotes, there's mine. That's mine.
There you go.
Anyway.
All right. Moving on.
Bone. Creepy wink. And dudes, if you're looking to become a feminist because you want to fix feminism for us, or you want like a cookie or a ribbon for doing a slut walk, I recommend maybe moving on. Though I do think they should give out cookies at slut walks. Gotta write that in my idea book. Myth number 5, white male feminist Matt McGorry was made in a laboratory in the Swiss Alps. Okay, great. I started this one. I know I shouldn't be starting rumors, but I really thought this one was true. It's not. It's what his lawyer says. So.
Okay, I'm sorry, Karen. Her attitude is really starting to piss me off.
Yeah, well, it's just because she's young.
Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe I'm just an asshole, but I just fucking hate that fake submissive. You know that she's probably a bitch.
Final myth: trans women are not real women. This is the biggest, most embarrassing myth of all time. Remember what I said about feminism being intersectional and inclusive? That includes people who identify as women as well. Duh. What are some
Well, you're the ones who created the trans exclusive feminists.
Yeah.
This is on you, friend. You talked about how feminism isn't or what did it? Whatever. There's so many different types of feminism. Well, a lot of types of feminism is really shit.
Yeah, it really doesn't like trans people, and
it really doesn't like trans people.
Doesn't like trans men because they're traitors to their gender, and they are appropriating all of that sweet, sweet male privilege, and then they get to actually live a privileged life, leaving their oppressed sisters in the dust. And they don't like trans women because they're just men in disguise, in costumes, who are trying to get into female-only spaces so that they can get all rapey and shit. So, yeah, like both of those assumptions as to, how trans-exclusive radical feminists may think of trans people, both of those are solidly based in all of the same theories that you espouse. So, just saying. Men are both privileged and rapey, therefore trans men and trans women are awful. See? That's how that works. Moving on.
But you've heard that you need busted. Write them in the comments below. And if you like this video,
I don't understand, like, this is the comment that I left on this, was like, she didn't actually bust any of these myths.
Yeah, why don't you read your comment? I want to see your comment.
You want me to read it?
I want you to read it, friend.
You didn't actually bust any of those myths. You just said this is a myth. What's really the case is this other thing. You provided no evidence or reasoning to debunk these myths. Myth one, feminism is about female supremacy. You're debunking, no, it's not. It's about equality. Next. You didn't address any of the arguments people make when they claim feminism is about female supremacy. You didn't address any of the evidence they typically provide to support their arguments. You just said, essentially, you're wrong, myth debunked.
Is your dog choking on something?
She's got asthma.
Oh.
So she's coughing and farting at the same time. Anyhow, I went on a little bit and I commented on 3 of the myths, and that's as far as I got in. But I also said, also, you should watch Mythbusters to see how myths actually get busted, or visit Snopes or the Straight Dope. None of those people who actually investigate and confirm or bust myths and urban legends would be impressed with your myth-busting superpowers, right? And yeah, no, they wouldn't be. They really wouldn't be impressed with her myth-busting, because she didn't actually bust anything.
No, she didn't really.
She just said, you say it's this way. Well, that's a myth. It's really this way. And she didn't really provide any evidence to back it up, or any, not even any sort of addressing of the arguments that usually accompany those myths in her mind.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, this is a thing, and then blah, blah, blah. This, and that's busted.
Yeah.
I don't believe it, therefore you shouldn't. Well, ha 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 on you, I still believe it.
Well, you know, it's no wonder we went off on so many weird tangents, because I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot to attack in this video, because she didn't really say much at all. You know, it's certainly not like that. Oh God, why can't I remember her name? Vanessa D. Fisher. That her feminism and the angel in the house, or something like that. Like, that was an extremely thought-provoking video.
Yeah, we should have her on. Maybe we can have a discussion with her that doesn't make you want to chew nails.
Yeah, well, I think we probably could. I don't think she is a feminist, though. I you know, sort of, we've been having this long sort of discussion in the comments, which has been a very, very interesting discussion, and very friendly. And I think she said something about, I don't really think of myself as a feminist. She said she thinks of herself as an independent gender scholar, or something like that. And I really like the idea of that. Just somebody who's interested in gender issues, but isn't really interested in advocating for one side or the other, you know, for men or for women. I like the idea. That's probably what gender studies should encompass, is stuff like that, not stuff like, you know, the mask you live in and all that kind of other bullshit. So,
yeah. Well, yeah, it's a little bit more in depth and actually is related to the. I'm not sure if I agree with all of her conclusions, but at least seems to be thinking rather than just spouting off of.
Well, and she said that, you know, and I agree with this too, is that you sort of have to approach history with an objective view, and sort of assume history existed in good faith, sort of, almost, right? Like this resentment that so many feminists have of the past. You know, the past was so oppressive to women. The past was one. You know, history was like, as the Declaration of Sentiments said, the history of mankind is one of repeated usurpations and injuries by man against woman, right? This is how feminists think of history. And when you think of history in that way, you don't ever examine the other side of things in any realistic way. And you're always assuming bad intention, whether it exists or not, whether maybe the outcome seems bad now, but maybe at the time it was the best outcome they could manage, right? With the best of intentions. So, you know, maybe it was a situation where there were bargains and trade-offs being made between men and women and the roles that they encompassed, right? That was sort of the best that could be done with what society had at the time, right? And there was nothing better available for women, in which case, how could you say that that system oppressed women?
When they were getting the best that they could.
Yeah, when they were getting the best that they could, you know, like, I mean, the whole thing with feminism smacks of resentment that men did not provide them with provisioning and protection and special privileges for nothing, for no reward, right? That men didn't run onto enemy spears to protect women just for nothing, no reward, not even respect and higher social status, right? They should have just done that for nothing. That would have not been oppression of women. Right? If men had been treated as utterly as slaves, that is in my mind, that's what I think feminists think, is that would be the only situation in which they would think that patriarchy wasn't oppressing women. You know, because their entire complaint seems to be men got things for the extra danger and work that they had to put in, and women had obligations.
This reminds me of something. As you probably know, I did a series on the Janissaries in the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know who the Janissaries are, they were Christian slaves, the sons of Christian slaves, who were basically kidnapped by the Ottoman Empire and force marched, hundreds of miles. And the ones that survived were gang pressed and sort of brainwashed into service in the Janissary Corps. And the Janissaries were an interesting group of essentially slaves. They were slaves because you couldn't do this to freeborn boys. You couldn't do all of the depredations required to create the mentality of the Janissaries in a boy that was of a Turkish noble blood. But they were interesting because they were free. They were essentially sort of free. They could own their own property. They could rise in ranks, and they occupied some of the highest levels of politics in the Turkish Empire. In fact, they basically ran the Turkish Empire. And what's interesting about that is how the Turkish nobles viewed the Janissaries, because the Janissaries made more money, and they were often in higher positions of power. And so the Turkish nobles would look at the native Turks would look at that and say that they were oppressed by the Janissaries because they did, the wage gap and the lack of Turkish CEOs and Turkish politicians and the lack of, Turkish innovators and all of this. And obviously the Janissaries were oppressing them. And it's exactly the same rhetoric that's coming out of this woman. Even though to become a Janissary, you had to be treated as expendable.
Yeah.
That's to turn yourself into a thoroughbred of achievement. You had to be treated like you were worthless.
Yeah, no, you had to be the 1 in 8 that survived the death march.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course the 1 in 8 who survives the death march is going to be the strongest and possibly the smartest, and they're going to achieve. Well, it's the same thing in our society. We put boys on not a literal death march, but it's something similar with the expectation that they suck it up, the expectation that they look to themselves to deal with any circumstance that we throw at them. We put them on a sort of death march. And then at the end, when those that survive and don't end up homeless or killing themselves or institutionalized or jailed, at the end, they turn into achievement thoroughbreds. We look at the sisters they're sisters who we don't put through the depredations because we have bottles and that say, I don't like little girls crying. We don't put them through the depredations that turn them into achievement thoroughbreds. And we say that they're oppressed.
Yeah.
Even though we skim the cream off the top of the boys and give it to the girls.
Yeah.
And girls look at this situation and they say, well, yeah. Like I said in the beginning, we want a society where girls achieve as much as boys, then we got to put girls on death marches.
Well,
we got to be okay with it.
David Futrell's going to have fun with that. With quoting you on that.
Go ahead, quote me on it.
We have to put girls through death marches. Rah!
Yeah, quote me on it.
Yeah.
No, we have to start not caring about girls' tears.
Yeah,
girls will achieve in proportion with how little sympathy they get from trying.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that may have certainly affected my upbringing was my parents' utter impatience with whining and tears. I mean, like that, if you were really hurt, right? Like really hurt, you know, it was okay to cry, and they'd try and convince you, you know, okay, you need to calm down because everything's going to be fine. Yes, your arm's broken or whatever. But we're getting you help. The doctor's going to fix it, you know, and the less you cry, the more he can concentrate. You're getting help now. Crying is a behavior that is designed to summon expert help. And once that help's arrived, really, if you can just try and suck it back, right? Because everybody knows it hurts. And my kids were, even my youngest, who's a bit clingy and stuff, right? I mean, he's a bit more sort of normal than my other two. Even he, you know, when he was having a tooth pulled out of his mouth with, it was abscessed and the anesthetic didn't take. Even he didn't move in the dentist chair. He was 4. And he did not move, and he just didn't twitch a muscle. And he just said, ow, 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 as tears poured out of the corners of his eyes. That's all he did, right? At age 4. And that's good, because the last thing you need is a kid who's like panicking and freaking out and screaming while a dentist is trying to work on your teeth.
Well, ooh.
Ooh, I'll mute.
Okay, so I mean, to a certain extent, yeah, suck it up. And like I said, girls will achieve in proportion to how much we don't care about their tears. If you can cry to get your way, then you will. And if you can't cry to get your way, then you'll learn to do for yourself.
Yeah.
So if you want a society in which girls achieve equally to boys, you got to stop caring about their tears. You know, instead of taking away the male tears mug, you need a girl tears mug.
Oh,
I drink your girl tears.
yeah, they're so
delicious.
So delicious.
Little girl tears. Give me more. I drink them all. Okay, I think that's a good place to. All right.
Vodka.
So you got your vodka?
I mix my girl tears with vodka.
Yeah, girl tears with vodka. And the thing is that we say this in the context of toughening people up when they need to be toughened up.
Yeah.
Men don't need to be toughened up anymore.
Yeah. Well, it depends. It depends on the kid. There are some very, very spoiled, sheltered boys out there, and I think that a lot of the male feminists come from that group.
Yeah. Well, either that or men who really, really have any problem with any hint of the possibility of being vulnerable as a man. Like Chink.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some male feminists who are basically silverback gorillas who will not cotton a single moment of that vulnerability. That's woman's work.
Yeah.
Oh, make me a sandwich. It's like there's some guys like that too.
Yeah.
Okay, but on that note, we have once again gone into battle with the zombie apocalypse. With a zombie. A super mutant.
Once again, we come out unscathed.
Unscathed. And if you have journeyed this far with us, do consider going a little farther and becoming a patron. Yes, commencing the e-begging.
Send us the cash.
So we can ensure that the first step to getting men's issues addressed, which is advocacy, everything begins with advocacy, is we build something to advocate, a platform.
We build awareness, which actually gets people involved. It gets regular people maybe actually, looking into things and applying political pressure and voting certain ways and the whole bit, right? So, I mean, if we're just a bunch of people trying to, build a little center or something like that, and nobody even knows about the problems that men are dealing with, or they don't know that people know, or whatever, right? Like if we don't have the awareness and we don't have the advocacy, then then all the money in the world isn't going to really do us much good as far as spending it on the ground. So,
well, yeah, I mean, there's been Sage Gerard, who created Zen Men, has pointed out, like, there are places, what institutions will do when dealing with issues that face men, or dealing with this idea of Title IX giving equal services to men, is they'll create the services, but they won't advertisement. They won't give any advocacy that they exist.
yeah.
And then nobody uses the service. Nobody becomes aware that the service exists, or even becomes aware enough that perhaps what they're dealing with might require service.
Or is actually because they're male.
Yeah.
I mean, so it doesn't occur to so many men that even though they know that a woman wouldn't be treated this way, they still don't see that they're being discriminated against because they're male. It's the most amazing kind of doublethink on the part of a lot of men these days.
Yeah, and
to say that would never happen to my sister, I know, but I still don't feel discriminated against because I'm a man.
Yeah, well, but it's like everything starts with actually recognizing the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And that I guarantee I've been working at this for 15 years. I'm not going to stop.
That's a long time, Alison.
Yeah, it is a long time. But that's about, it's like it took me a couple years to realize the situation between myself and my husband, and actually get my eyes opened in a big way to the reality of privilege and who has it and who doesn't. So that started, like 3 years after I met my husband, was when I was like, you know what? This shit is this is wrong.
Something's got to be done.
Something's got to be done. Nobody's doing it. So, well, yeah, nobody's doing it.
Yeah.
Well, there are a few now, but yeah, like I said, it begins with advocacy. And again, if you want to throw a few shekels in the hat to make sure that this voice doesn't die, this voice in the radioactive icy radioactive wasteland of social justice zombies, what is the fucking link? www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Like I said, the first step is advocacy. The first step is a voice. The first step is recognition. And I'm not going to stop bringing recognition to these issues. So, peace out.